Admirals. The Admiral of the Mediterranean Fleet, the Caputan Pasha, was the senior figure in the Ottoman Navy. 39 His post, however, emerged as a well-defined office in the Sultan's service only during the course of the 16th century. There is no record of the admirals before 1453, but, after this date, and probably before, it became customary for the Sanjak governor of Gallipoli to command the fleet, evidently, because Gallipoli happened to be the most important naval base and fell within his Sanjak. His command, however, was not automatic. In 1475, for example, it was the Vizier Jedik Ahmed Pasha who commanded the fleet which sailed against Azov and Kaffa, and also the fleet which took the troops from Vlora to Otranto in 1481. Nonetheless, it seems that, during the reign of Mehmed II, it was the Sanjak governor of Gallipoli who was the fleet commander in principle, if not always in practice. An episode in the career of the Grand Vizier Mahmud Pasha illustrates this point. In 1469-70, Mehmed II dismissed him from his post as Grand Vizier, and appointed him, instead, to the Sanjak of Gallipoli. The reason for this apparent demotion was the projected attack on the Venetian island of Negroponte. This required a large fleet and, as Sanjak governor, Mahmud had the task of constructing the ships and taking command of them when they put to sea. For that year at least, the governorship of Gallipoli had become one of the most important posts of the empire, and required a man of Mahmud Pasha's abilities to fill it. After the fall of Negroponte, Mahmud returned to the Vizierate. As mere Sanjak governors, the admirals did not occupy an important position in the Ottoman ruling establishment, except when a man of high personal standing occupied the post, as was the case during Mahmud Pasha's tenure, and also between 1506 and 1511, when her Seksate Ahmed Pasha was admiral in the interval between two terms as Grand Vizier. It was only in 1533, during the reign of Suleiman I, 1520-66, that the post of admiral acquired both a clear definition and a high status. This was due in part to the increasing importance of maritime affairs, but especially to the illustrious reputation of the new admiral. In 1533, Suleiman bestowed the office on Hayreddin Barbarossa, the conqueror of Algiers. It was clearly unthinkable to make such a man a mere Sanjak governor. Instead, the appointment came with the governor-generalship of the new province of the archipelago, which the Sultan had created specially for Barbarossa by detaching the coastal Sanyaks of Greece and western Turkey from the existing provinces of Rumelia and Anatolia. The province of the archipelago was thus an ad hominem creation, but one which nevertheless lasted. It was not, however, until after the reign of Suleiman I that the province came to exist permanently in its own right, with the admiral as its governor-general. When Barbarossa died in 1546, his successor was the Sultan's head gatekeeper, Sokollu Mehmed, who held the admiralty as his first post outside the palace. Given Sokollu's lack of distinction at this stage of his career, the Sultan clearly did not wish to appoint him as a governor-general. Instead, like the admirals before Barbarossa, he received the office with the Sanjak governorship of Gallipoli. This was also true of his successor, Shinan Pasha. Shinan, however, was brother of the Grand Vizier, Rustem Pasha, and it was probably at Rustem's urging that Suleiman revived the defunct province of the archipelago and appointed Shinan as governor-general. It is clear, however, that the Sultan still regarded this as an ad hominem appointment, since Shinan's successor, Piala, received the office of admiral as Sanjak governor of Gallipoli. The Sultan's warrant appointing him admiral in January 1555 reads, "I have increased my favors towards the Zemit of the head gatekeeper, Piala, and, with effect from 8th of January, 1555, the admiralty and the Sanjak of Gallipoli, with its Has lands worth 550,000 akshas has been bestowed on him." Piala received promotion to the governor-generalship of the revived province of the archipelago in 1558, after distinguishing himself in action against the Spaniards in North Africa. 40. In 1566, on the accession of Selim II, Piala received a promotion to the Vizierate. His successor as admiral was the Aga of the Janissaries, Muezzin Zayd Ali. He received the admiralty with the province of the archipelago. This was probably in recognition of his existing status. But, from the time of his appointment, the province was in continuous existence with the admirals as governors-general. To become admiral did not require previous experience of the sea. The important fact in determining eligibility for the post was that the admiral was also a provincial governor, and appointments to the admiralty typically followed the pattern of appointments to the provinces. It is quite usual, therefore, in the 16th and 17th centuries, to find that admirals were graduates of palace service. Sokollu Mehmed and Piala are both examples and, In the following century, things did not change. Khatib Chelebi notes in his list of admirals that, for example, Dervish Pasha, later Grand Vizier, graduated from the palace on 18th of January, 1606, while head gardener, with the post of admiral, or that Hafiz Ahmed graduated from the palace and became admiral in 1608. 41 Some later admirals had also, like Muezzin Zayd Ali, served as Aga of the Janissaries, or, like Jigli Zayd Shinan, who became admiral in 1591, as governors in the provinces. The lack of maritime experience did not necessarily lead to incompetence at sea. Piala Pasha and Jigli Zayd Shinan, for example, being notably successful fleet commanders. However, this was not invariably the case, leading Khatib Chelebi to state, as the first of 39 principles for the effective management of the fleet: if the admiral himself is not a corsair, he should consult with corsairs concerning the sea and maritime war. He should listen, and not act on his own opinion. 42. Khatib Chelebi's insistence on taking advice from corsairs is an indication of the importance to the Ottoman fleet of the Muslim pirates of North Africa, whose predatory activities served in effect as a naval school in training seamen. On occasions, too, the North African corsairs provided the Ottoman fleet not only with galley captains, but also with admirals. The most famous of these was Hayreddin Barbarossa. The second such appointment was Oruç Ali, who succeeded to the admiralty at a time of crisis following the Battle of Lepanto. He began his career as an Algerian corsair, but in 1556, came to Istanbul to serve as a captain in the Ottoman fleet, with a daily salary that reflected his distinction. He later returned to Algiers as Governor-General, and it was as Governor-General that he fought at Lepanto. On the death in that battle of Muezzin Zayd Ali, he succeeded him in the Admiralty. 43 His successor in 1588, Oruç Hasan Pasha, had been in his following and, like his patron, had lived as a corsair in Algiers. The last of Oruç Ali's followers to serve as admiral was Jafar Pasha, who held the office for 2 years from 1606. After this, the only nautical figure to occupy the office, in 1616-17, and again in 1617-19, was Chelebi Ali Pasha, the son of a governor-general of Tunis, originally from the Aegean island of Kos. 44 These figures, however, were exceptions in the series of landsmen who served as admirals. The admiral of the Mediterranean fleet was the senior naval commander in the empire. Besides him, however, there were captains of squadrons based outside Istanbul and Gallipoli, who were able to operate independently of his command. These flotillas and their captains first appear in records in the mid-16th century, although they must have been in existence long before. Nearest to Istanbul was the captain of Kavala, who commanded a squadron of galleys, patrolling the northern Aegean as far south as Lesbos. His most important function, at least according to records from the second half of the 16th century, was to escort, as far as the Dardanelles, ships carrying grain from northern and central Greece to the capital, guarding them from pirates, and also preventing the illegal sale of grain. At the same time, a smaller squadron, of only 2 galleys in 1566, operated under the command of the Sanjak governor of Lesbos, guarding the island and nearby coastline. There was a larger fleet, 10 galleys in 1566, under the command of the Sanjak governor of Rhodes. This island and its dependencies commanded the sea route between Egypt and Istanbul, and dominated the entrance to the Aegean and the eastern Mediterranean between southern Turkey and Cyprus. In view of its strategic position, Suleiman I must have established a fleet there immediately after its conquest in 1522.45. During the same period, governors of other Sanyaks on the Aegean coast of Turkey sometimes received commands to patrol the seas off their Sanyaks with 1 or more galleys. The only ships, however, on permanent station outside Istanbul and Gallipoli seem to have been those at Kavala, Lesbos, and Rhodes. After 1566, however, when the Admirals province of the archipelago became a permanent institution, it became customary for 8 of the Sanjak governors in the province each to supply 1 or more ships to the imperial fleet when it put to sea, suggesting that the vessels were permanently on standby in the Sanyaks. 46 During his periods as admiral between 1616 and 1619, Chelebi Ali increased the number of such vessels, by requiring Chios, Naxos and Mahdia each to provide a ship. 47 This network of small flotillas, concentrated especially in the Aegean, served both to provide reinforcements to the imperial fleet, and to defend the shipping lanes to the capital from pirates and enemy attack. There were further squadrons with independent captains outside this area. When he conquered Egypt in 1517, Selim I acquired 2 important harbors, The first of these was Alexandria, which the cartographer, Reis, described in 1526 as a key port, especially for the Arab lands. 48. The second was Suez, which provided a base for fleets in the Red Sea and Indian Ocean. It is most probable that Selim appointed an admiral in Egypt immediately after the conquest, although the first Ottoman record of the Admiral of Egypt is from 1528. He was commander of both the Suez and Alexandria fleets until 1560, when the Sultan created a separate admiralty at Suez. The function of the fleet at Alexandria was to protect the eastern Mediterranean and the trade routes from Egypt, cooperating in this duty with the Sanjak governor of Rhodes. The fleet at Suez was for the defense of the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. The government, however, also recognized that the entry to the Red Sea at the Bab al-Mandab had great strategic importance and, probably a little before 1560, established a flotilla there under the command of the captain of Yemen or captain of Mocha and Appas. In 1565, this captain commanded a squadron of 6 galleys, equipped from Suez. It is unlikely, however, given the vicissitudes of Ottoman rule in Yemen, that it survived for long. These fleets in Egypt and the Red Sea were independent of the Admiral in Istanbul. So, too, were the ships that operated under independent captains on the Danube and its tributaries. The earliest such admiralty was at Buda, where Suleiman I must have created a flotilla immediately after its annexation in 1541. One fleet, however, proved to be insufficient and, in 1560, the Sanjak governor of Mohaç petitioned the Sultan for a new squadron in his district, since the enemy were attacking the islands in the Danube, at a point too far south for the ships to reach from Buda. References to the captain of Mohaç in subsequent years show that the Sultan answered the request. The third Rumelian fleet was on the Sava, which joins the Danube at Belgrade. The first reference to a captain of the Sava dates from 1556, suggesting that the Sultan perhaps also created this fleet after the annexation of Hungary. 50. In addition to these permanently established flotillas under the command of captains or Sanjak governors, the Sultan sometimes created temporary commands for short-lived fleets. In the 1580s, for example, the creation of the office of captain of the Caspian Sea followed Ottoman conquests in the Caucasus. 51. The most important fleet outside Istanbul was, however, the fleet at Algiers. It was, above all, the Algerians who carried out the continuous raids against Christian shipping in the Mediterranean and beyond, and who also, when they fought under the command of their governor-general, formed the most effective contingent in the Ottoman fleet. Nonetheless, their participation in Ottoman warfare was, more or less, voluntary. In his decrees, the Sultan could order the governor-general of Algiers merely to encourage the corsair captains to join the fleet, but he could not exercise the direct control that he could over the other naval commanders in the empire.